You're listening to community radio at its best. Uptown Radio, WJYN 98.5 FM, serving Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The opinions of this program are not the opinions of the station management or the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are seven acknowledged wonders of the world. You are about to witness the eighth.
Are you hep to the jive? Yes, yes. Are you hep to the jive? Yes, yes.
Coming up is the entrepreneur of SoulPatrol.com, Mr. Bob Davis. We're going to talk about soul, great black music. We're going to talk about the people. We're going to talk about technology when we return to Burn.
All right. This is Bob Davis, and I'm reporting for SoulPatrol.net Radio, and we're here at an undisclosed location somewhere in the city of New York. And what we have here is something special. We've got the legendary funk, rock, blues, whatever, guitarist, drummer extraordinaire, and vocalist, Mr. Buddy Miles. So we want to welcome you to our microphones here, Buddy, and just say hello. How you doing?
Well, thank you so much, Bob. I'm doing just fine. It's been a little rough around the edges, you know, because what time can do after, especially after what I have went through over the years. And I'm not saying that in a negative way, but I'm very, very happy to say that because of one lady that is very close and near and dear to me, my wife, Miss Shirley Chambers Miles,
who incidentally is here.
Who is here.
So Buddy had to say that.
Has often told me that it is all up to me. And she has been so correct that it's really scary.
Well, I just want to say, to chime in there, Miss Shirley Miles has been a member of Soul Patrol for a very long time, and she's been very supportive of everything that we've been trying to do. And I appreciate that. So I'll throw in my 2 cents there. Since you kind of alluded to it, Buddy, why don't you tell us about your health? Some people, there's all kinds of stories flying around the internet with respect to Buddy Miles and his health.
Well, let me put it this way. My opening statement, I mentioned the fact of many years of abuse, and it's not only substance abuse, it's just abuse personified in many ways. And when you have a situation like that, it's because you either don't care, you either have given up all hopes of coming back to what life is really supposed to be about, or whatever. But when you meet someone that can help you get back to the roots, back to the grassroots of what you're really about, I couldn't think of a better person than my wife. And I have been married now for 10 years. And I never would have dreamed that it would have been even have been possible. But so be it. It was probably one of the most, one of the nicest things that I ever done for myself. My health, yes, number one, yes, I have a pacemaker. The reason why I do is because of that abuse. But I chose to do it because I want to make sure, because I still can't put a limit on time and how long, but I'll go along with anything that a good doctor, and which I have in the beautiful city of Austin, Texas. I keep myself clean. I don't go around drugs. I don't do any drugs. I haven't done any drugs. It's just non-existent. And I am very proud to say that to people that would understand any or all, because it's a nice thing, it's a nice gesture to say that you're back to the basics. And that's where I am at this point, and hope to be for the rest of my life. For the simple reason is that I've got a brand new high that I've always had anyway, and I'm just reuniting it back, and it's called music. And I want to thank all of the people, whether it be underground, whether it be commercial, whether it be whatever type of situation, because I've been in all of them with so many different gifted artists. And I want to say thank you to each and every one of them, as many as I can come up with in this conversation, and in hopes of getting an understanding.
Well, speaking of gifted artists, I want to ask you first about an artist that probably not too many interviewers will ask you about, that you have worked with, and that's Mr. Lightning Rod. And I want to ask you about him because you participated in perhaps a seminal record or a seminal recording with him, and called Doriella DuFontaine. Can you give us some words about Lightning Rod, about Doriella DuFontaine?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, let me put it this way. It all began one evening in New York City at a studio called Record Plant.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really, till this day, I never understood the association between him and Jimi Hendrix. But it was done on the basis of just liking some people that you thought were at least trying to do something with what they believed in musically, whether it be radical or, you know, or whatever be it as it may. Lightning Rod, and also the group called The Last Poets, was probably one of the first real true rap records ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very proud of that. Myself and Jimi Hendrix, we did all of the music for that record.
Right.
And we did it in conjunction with a guy by the name of Alan Douglas at the time. As we all know, rap has done come quite a ways these days. There's some that, yes, I care for, and there's some that, well, that are, as far as I'm concerned, iffy, very iffy. But, you know, a dollar is a dollar. What can I say? That's what makes the world go around.
Well, the reason I wanted to bring that up is because a few years ago I had the opportunity to do a presentation in Baltimore, Maryland, and it was about 5 years ago, and it was during the same period of time that we're in right now. It was part of a celebration of Jimi Hendrix's birthday. It was a weekend-long Jimi Hendrix thing in Baltimore. They had a whole bunch of different activities, and I was invited there to give a presentation on Jimi Hendrix to a auditorium filled with 400 inner city, that means black, young people, to talk about Jimi Hendrix. And one of the things that I did during the course of that presentation was I played the song, Doriella DuFontaine. And then I asked the group, what do you think of that song that I just played? And we're going to play the song during the course of this broadcast also, so those of you who haven't heard it can hear it. And fundamentally what it is a stank, nasty funk jam where Jimi Hendrix plays both the bass and the guitar, and Buddy Miles plays the drums.
And the organ.
And Lightning Rod has this super hellified rap that goes on and on and on and on about a prostitute in New Orleans named Doriella DuFontaine. And when I played that song, I can't help it. I played that song for this kid, this group of 400 inner city, that means black, kids between the ages of, I don't know, they're like 10 to 15, let's say. They just went, crazy. And then when I told them who it was, they said, man, that's Jimi Hendrix? I said, yeah, that's Jimi Hendrix. Y'all didn't know that he was his brother, did you? Y'all have been told that he was white. I know that that's what you think. So I wanted to bring that up because I think things like that are important.
Yeah, amen.
And that's not to denigrate anybody else's music at any other point in time, but to understand that when we talk about great black music from the ancient to the future, none of these genre labels actually fit. It is what it is. All right. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's important, and I think a lot of people don't know that you participated in that. I think that a lot of people don't even know about that record, but that's a big piece of history. So now, sticking with, because we're going to get into some historical stuff too, but I want
the name of the album is called The Last Poets, by the way.
Right. I want to fast forward to today. Musically speaking, where is Buddy Miles' head at right now?
Well, I have done so many things over the years, and I just cannot forget, of course, like the old saying, be the good old days. And of course, your past definitely is relevant to your future.
Mm-hmm.
So, thereby which ideas comes to one's mind. In my situation, I can't speak for anybody else but myself. I will say this, that what I want to do is I have a story to tell, because I have a couple of situations that are untold in the music world in particular that I want to be acknowledged by the public if they so desire to, if I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. That where I came from originally, I come from rhythm and blues, rock, and I was very lucky to have been a part of different very important music ensembles. But probably my best known, as far as I am concerned, as a musician coming up in the business, especially at my age when it first all began. I was 18 years old. I was playing in a band in California called the Electric Flag, an American music book band. And it featured the guitar virtuosos of probably one of the most talented Jewish American-born guitarists, who probably was the main reason why so many white musicians have went and desired to play blues, especially in the year of 2000, especially young. You have your John Mayers, you have your Kenny Wayne Shepherds, you have your
Johnny Lang.
Johnny Lang.
Mm-hmm.
You have so many guys that love Jimmy so much because of that reason. And when they hear that I'm even around, it's a very almost, you know, a goosebump type of a situation when young men come up and acknowledge me and tell me that, guess who I'm standing next to, or who I'm playing with? I'm playing with Jimmy's drummer.
You're listening to community radio at its best. Uptown Radio, WJYN 98.5 FM, serving Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The opinions of this program are not the opinions of the station management or the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 7 acknowledged wonders of the world. You are about to witness the 8th.
Are you hep to the jive? Are you hep to the jive?
Coming up is the entrepreneur of SoulPatrol.com, Mr. Bob Davis. We're going to talk about soul, great black music. We're going to talk about the people. We're going to talk about technology. When we return to Burn.
Bob, you see how humble this man is? This is
Now, I know that there was another drummer in Jimmy's life who, after all, deserves a lot of credit himself because he's a great drummer. But there was a difference. And it wasn't because about being better, not really as far as I'm concerned. It was as far as I believe Jimmy from what he told me, because I questioned him, and because I was really kind of nervous at first when we talked about it. And this is when I'm relating to the Band of Gypsies, because let's face it, a lot of people, it has been said by many of the greatest guitarists in this country that the Band of Gypsies is probably the best rock trio ever made or ever done. And I'm very, very proud of that. Not just because of the fact that I played with Jimi Hendrix, but because of the fact that I was part of something that really made a lot of musical sense, because let's face it, that's what it's all about. It's about the music, first and foremost. It's not really about who you are. It's about if you can get together, it's about if you can play together, and it's about if you can do your work together and respect each of us. It doesn't have anything to do with how many drugs you think you can take and try to kill yourself or give yourself, stab wounds or anything of that sort. But it's like, for me, one of the many things in my life that I can really say that I really am just so very proud of, because Jimi Hendrix and myself, James Marshall Hendrix, we were very, very close. If I were to ask why he felt the way that he did about me, I guess it's because he thought that I fit what he wanted to do.
Let's ask it. Let me interrupt you just for a second. Basic question. For those who don't know, how did the Band of Gypsys come to be, and how is that different from this other entity that we've heard of called the Jimi Hendrix Experience?
Oh, very simple. It was at a time period, like, you see, when you are in certain businesses that where people go back and forth and in and out of genres, that they call it downtime. Now, when you did the things that Jimi Hendrix did in his life at that time, good or bad or indifferent, however you want to call it, he felt the need, I guess, to make a change. Now, I, to this day, still am very, not puzzled, but I often wondered, because at the time that he asked me to come to New York to talk to him about it, I hadn't met Billy Cox yet. I didn't know who he was, matter of fact. I was living in upstate New York, about 30 miles from Woodstock, in a place called Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie, New York.
Yeah. Which is roughly 90 miles from New York. Okay. Now, this was in the dead, I'll never forget, this was in the dead of winter. I drove up, I got to his apartment at the Village. He was living down in the Village on, was it 14th Street? Went to his apartment. So I sat there, and I believe Billy Cox was there, if I recall. But the thing that really kind of puzzled me is why then, at that time, because I just thought that it was a rest period for Jimmy. I did not know that he was having that kind of trouble with Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding. And of course, later, as time went along, after two of them have deceased, I found out that, of course, it was over money and Jimmy's management, because they didn't want him to change. I also was fired for the very same reason, because his manager at the time, Michael Jeffries, who's of English descent, did not want Jimmy to have an all-black band, period.
So, the Band of Gypsys, just for a little background for those who don't know, the Band of Gypsys album is a live recording that was done where at the Fillmore in New York.
Fillmore, yeah.
Right? It's done at the Fillmore over the course of New Year's Eve, New Year's Day.
Right.
And
4 shows.
4 shows, and it's a stark album, and we'll play a cut from there also here so you can get a feel. It was a revolutionary kind of thing for a lot of reasons. Primary one of which is the one you just mentioned. It's an all black rock and roll band trio, okay? Guitar, bass, drums, and it's got some revolutionary at that time material on it, and it was particularly appealing to me personally as a 13-year-old kid in New York City, because it was a funk album. And it's a rock and roll band playing.
I take that as a very high compliment, Bob. Thank you.
It's maybe the very first total funk album, and the thing that was most striking to me, again, as an impressionable 13-year-old kid, it had a red, black, and green album cover, and that red, black, and green album cover the idea of that just operated on my psyche to no end. And I'm sure that was no accident. Somebody said, "Hey, we got to do something. We got to make a statement here," because the album cover itself.
Jimmy Buddy.
The album cover itself is kind of like psychedelic. So it's got pictures of everybody on there, but you really can't. It's not clear. It's not done with clarity on purpose. But the fact that the colors come through. Tell me about that.
Well, it's like anything else that happened in those days. If you was into and knew anything about the psychedelic era, per se, as they say. Now, I never really cared for acid, and most people that will be hearing this conversation over the media, over whatever it's going to be, will understand, I'm sure, and I hope, that you got to understand, I was just a baby. I really was very much questionable about certain things. Myself, I never did it then. And when I did do it, I only did it twice, but we'll get to that. Because it was real strange. Okay. Jimmy once again, and Billy once again, were tight for one reason and one reason only, is because they were in, of course, the world-renowned Screaming Eagles in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Jimmy was a paratrooper. And the reason why he got out of the service, of course, is because he partially broke his leg. And he was very lucky that it didn't make him walk funny, because that's what he told me. He said that he used to check out instruments, and, guitars and everything, and play. Him and Billy would play on the bass. I mean, on the Army base.
Air Force.
No, it was Army. It was Army. It was a paratrooper. For me, even at that time, I still was kind of gun shy, because his ideas were so authentic, but I still wasn't quite sure, because after all, the man had went through a regimen of negatives because of what happened to him. I mean, the man was, when he was in the Jimi Hendrix Experience, they had him on the road. He told me one time that they had him out on the road in slots of 6 to 8 months at a time. That's a lot of work. That is a lot of energy. And he was playing, like the very first concert that he did, one of them, this is when Chaz Chandler was his manager, even before Michael Jeffries was, because Chaz Chandler managed him and got in touch with Jimmy because of a girl by the name of Linda Keith, who used to go with Keith Richards. Over, and she invited Keith to go down to see Jimmy also at a club called the Cafe Wall, that's still in existence these days, down in the village. Okay. Anyway, as the story goes, I tried to grasp onto the fact that, is this real, or is this just a dream? or is it me? A couple of times I had to pinch myself because I knew at the time of who I was dealing with. But also one thing that I also thought about at the same time, that before the Band of Gypsies, see, I had my own band at that time too, which I had some very, very gifted people myself. For instance, my guitar player played in a band called Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. My bass player, who now plays with Taj Mahal, Billy Rich, who was from my hometown, which is Omaha, Nebraska. That's where I was born and raised. And I had a horn section, and I was living in Poughkeepsie, New York. And how that whole thing happened is, one night, one of the guys came up to me and told me, he says, if we don't go down to 4 pieces, and it was Jimmy McCarty, who was a guitar player. I love you, never forget you, but I don't think that I had a fair chance. Okay. So what I chose to do is to go ahead, and I really think that the guys got in their mind that when I left out of the house, we had a beautiful farmhouse, had a rehearsal room and everything in it.
This is in Poughkeepsie?
In Poughkeepsie, yeah.
Right.
A lady by the name of Elizabeth Blow rented it to me. I'll never forget that. I left, and on the way, I'll never forget the ride, I was kind of sad because I knew my band was going to split up. I knew it. And okay, I once again got to the city, down in the village.
So you and Jimmy are talking about the possibilities.
Yeah, we were talking about it. And so, but beforehand, you know, we had always went to this club called Steve Paul's Scene, which is above where the House of Blues and where B.B. King's is at, in downtown Manhattan. I used to go there quite frequently. Me and Jimmy would jam quite a bit. We also jammed with Keith Emerson, who had a band at that time called The Nice. We used to play with a guy by the name of Terry Reed. We used to jam with just about everybody. Johnny Winter, David Clayton Thomas from Blood, you know, before Blood, Sweat and Tears, you know, everybody. Matter of fact, me and David Clayton Thomas and Harvey was going to also start. I mean, just everybody, man. They just it was almost like they was just picking on me to be sweet to me, and I'll never, you know, I don't forget moments like that.
Everybody wanted Buddy to be the drummer for the band.
But
And so
Everybody Crosby, Stills, and that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story in itself too, that we'll get to. You are giving me a chance to really express myself, and I'm very, very thankful.
Yeah, thank you, Buddy.
The thing about Jimmy with me and the Band of Gypsies that really stood out is, number one, when we practiced for the Band of Gypsies, we had 9 rehearsals. We did it in 9 days. Then we played the Fillmore. So you figure 9 days, it was like 31st. So you figure 9 days back we'd have made it, just say at the end of December.
Made it the 19th.
Yeah, which would have made it the 19th. We
No,
played
the 21st.
Yeah, 21st. We practiced at a place called Baggy Studios. Jimmy wanted me to play double basses. And I told him, I tried it, I can play them, but I said, Jimmy, I'm sorry. I said, if you want me to, I'll leave right now. And he says, buddy, what are you talking about? He says, he told his road manager, he says, get that shit out of here and give this man what he needs to have now. And I said, look, you don't have to do that. I mean, you know, it's always, he said, buddy, please. He says, you know, don't leave me now, please. So I stood there and I was kind of speechless. I mean, you know, after all, I'm sitting there, you know, and James Marshall Hendrix is telling me this. The world's greatest rock guitarist. And I still believe that to this day. There's nobody can touch him, including Eric Clapton. A lot of people like to say that, but that's not true. I love you, Eric, but no. I can't give it to you.
I don't think Jimmy has a comparable either. I just don't.
I have even got stories about how I met Eric Clapton.
Let's stay on Jimmy first.
But
Well,
once
even more specifically, let me just come back around to the Band of Gypsies,
right.
because I don't want people that are listening to this to lose sight of the fact that
No. I'm just giving you little tidbits, and I'm doing it for a reason.
Okay, well then keep going.
Because you see, this is what the music world is about. 1 minute you're here, 1 minute you're there, here, there, and everywhere. And that's what happens, I guess, when you're sought after. And at my age, I guess I was sought after. I mean, that's the only way that I can put it. I don't know.
Okay.
To me, all I was doing is just being myself. Yeah, big guy, young guy, you know, strong and everything. Of course, I'm a lot older now. I still have the same stamina, but I have to work a little harder at it, which is no big deal. But you see, back in those days, it was a lot different. And once again, drugs did not have a thing to do with it. It was just the fact that that was just the motion of the ocean.
Right.
It's a good feeling just bringing on old friends. On bass, Billy Cox. On drums, Mr. Buddy Miles. On guitar and vocals, Mr. Jimi Hendrix. And on a bass,
You're listening to community radio at its best. Uptown Radio, WJYN 98.5 FM, serving Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The opinions of this program are not the opinions of the station management or the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 7 acknowledged wonders of the world. You are about to witness the 8th.
are you hep to the jive? Are you hep to the jive?
Coming up is the entrepreneur of SoulPatrol.com, Mr. Bob Davis. We're going to talk about soul, great black music. We're going to talk about the people. We're going to talk about technology. When we return to Burn.
Jimmy, I saw this man so unhappy. And see, I'm a very sensitive man, and I'll admit it. I hate to see people downgrade themselves for all the wrong reasons. And I even went to him and asked him, is there anything that I can do to help? And he would always tell me, he would kind of look down. Every once in a while he would look at me in the eyes. And he said, Bud, or he called me B, Buddy. He would tell me, he would say, listen, just promise me one thing. Let's do this. And I said, okay. Because I wanted to prove his point and make a statement to a couple of people who's not with us today. And one of those people was Bill Graham. Because he was even unsure too. But because it was Jimmy, and of course he knew me, and the proof was in the pudding by him putting mine and Jimmy's picture on the program of the shows. I don't know if you recall seeing them.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But now, you see, when you're doing big business for people, the man had every right to question anybody's whatever. I mean, after all, it was his venue. But Bill was a Jewish man that was brought up in very strange ways, and he loved Jimmy. And when he heard us, I mean, I couldn't believe it, man. After we got our first performance, which was we played our first performance. We played for about an hour 45 minutes of just nothing but jamming and getting loosened up and stuff. That's what I called it. And just, getting to know each other on stage, because after all, even though that we had jammed before, it was kind of different because for me, because I looked at the situation as being involved in a new horizon.
It's a new band.
A new band.
It's a new band.
And so did a few other people. His management, well, Chaz Chandler was out of the picture, but Michael Jeffries, I knew right from Jump Street, didn't like it because Michael didn't like me. But what assassin would, because that's what he was.
Well, why didn't he like you? What was the problem he had? Because you were black?
Yep. He did not want, so does that tell you something?
Yeah.
He's prejudiced.
I heard that too.
And a lot of people, English people, are.
Ooh.
Oh boy. All of our fans in the UK.
Listen.
Nothing personal.
Nothing personal, people in the UK, but let me explain something to you. Back in the day, I played Royal Albert Hall with my own band myself. I have played all over Europe. I have records and albums to prove it. Okay?
So it's a personal thing from his manager, not
what
his
I'm
band.
saying, it's a personal thing from one of your own people. All of you people from the UK. This is not, I'm sending out a personal message to say that I am doing this interview to get back at anybody. I am a man of true, natural facts, period. And that's what's being asked of me.
Okay, so it's one guy. It's one guy that was involved, and there was a problem, and
he was a power guy.
let's not pussyfoot around about what the problem was. So
Okay, now.
that's all we're saying.
Now,
That's all we're saying. Yeah.
we got done with the Band of Gypsies. We did 4 days. We did 4 shows. New Year's night and New Year's Day. We sold all of them out. Okay. About a week, let's see, about a week, 10 days later, there was this benefit at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Now, here I am, just trying to be honest. Didn't faze Billy Cox none. He could have cared less. But now, my sister, Gloria Jean Miles, who is not with me anymore. I love you, Tootie.
Corroborated this story in 1990.
But now, what do? You got the greatest rock guitarist in the world opening a show. We go up on the stage. We start playing. But before we went on stage, I happened to be sitting down next to my sister. So I turned my head to the right. My sister was to the left of me. Jimmy was on the other side of my sister. And my sister is my witness. I watched Michael Jeffries give Jimi Hendrix 2 tabs of Owsley Purple Acid. Okay?
How do you know what kind it was?
The reason why he did that is, you ever heard the old expression, when somebody slips you a Mickey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Well, somebody slipped him a Murphy.
Damn.
Couple of them.
He got a big Murphy.
Now,
Yeah, I heard that too.
we're playing, everything is going good, because you see, a real true musician is not, I don't care who you are, whether you're a copycat, whether you're doing your own music, it's going to take you a minimum of 3 songs to get warmed up,
Why you have sound check?
you know. And see, I am the type of guys, if I don't like it, I used to have sound checks and make my band play for until it was time to go on stage.
I
If
witnessed
it wasn't
that.
right.
Yes, he has.
I've seen many musicians do that.
You know, because I don't play.
Mm-hmm.
No, he don't.
I don't play about my music. I mean, thank you for saying that I'm humble. But you see, when I'm on that stage, that is my way of saying thank you, dear Lord. I am a sultan to do your work.
Amen.
You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is nothing. You got people that's giving you their hard-earned money. You got situations, and why in the world? I mean, you got to understand something. When we did that benefit at Madison Square Garden, that place was sold out in front of 20,000 people. 18 minutes exactly. I found myself having to pick Jimi Hendrix up off of the floor, off of the ground, because he just sat down in a circle like he was doing, like how they do in yoga,
Mm-hmm.
with his legs and everything. He had the most bizarre look on his face, and I put my hand in front of his face like that. So what I did is I politely said, "Stand up, James. James Marshall, stand up." So
had
he
to
wouldn't
scoop him
stand.
up.
So he wouldn't stand up. So I scooped him up. Because I did not want people to see him like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what those people come and gave him their hard-earned money for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not
It
right.
was a setup.
So the guy took 2 hits of acid, you know,
On top of what he had already.
whatever else he had in him.
Yes.
Right.
And
Which
so,
was a lie.
you know, he
was already wasted.
So he was gone.
He was gone.
He was gone. So
Right.
so the show was a disaster.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Michael Jeffries.
Now, that's another
Public
thing.
disaster. Just
That's another thing that I hold against Billy Cox.
Billy Cox could have.
I don't have any kind words to say about Billy Cox at all.
Not anymore.
Let's get it understood.
Don't use that. Don't say I hate that.
Now, if you want to count it out, do so. I'll leave it up to you. Because I have bad blood. I'm sorry, dear Lord, if you want to scold me, go ahead. If I have to cry, I will. But this all started, and it didn't have to if it would have been done right.
He still gets
That's
praise.
all I ask. If you didn't want me there, I'm not going to look bad for the man upstairs ever if I don't have to. Now that's just the bottom line, my friend. That goes for James Marshall Hendricks. That would go the same applied to Michael Bloomfield, because you don't know, these people don't know personally what I went through my musical career.
No, they don't.
And I went through hell and back and over around, and even with myself. I am damn lucky to be here to even talk to you, Bob, to tell you about it.
Wasn't that the name of one of your albums?
Yeah. It's an excellent album, by the way.
Yes, it
Hell and
is.
Back.
Yes, it is. The Hell and Back.
That's in the book, by the way, this story.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cox, but
Don't
you
apologize
see,
for your experience.
you see, wait a minute. This is not an apology. I'm saying it because here we are in the year 2000, almost 7, and you've got the damn nerve to put my name on a cover of your album.
Let's talk about that album just for a moment.
You're listening to Soul Patrol Internet Radio. Soul Patrol Internet Radio. Welcome.
I mean, we talked
Now,
earlier. We talked
after this is over with, you'll never hear me say another word about it, and this is what I've been waiting for, is to talk to this man.
Okay.
Okay, I listened to this album. We're here, and it's end of November, right after Thanksgiving, 2006, and I received a copy of this album to review. And I've listened to this album. So
See, what I'm saying, my darling, is
Oh, I'm with you.
I needed.
I'm right there in the front seat.
I needed to do this.
the name of this album is called. It says Billy Cox and Buddy Miles, and it's subtitled "The Band of Gypsies Return." So, I told you guys a little while ago about the big influence that the original Band of Gypsies album had on me, and you know, because there were certain characteristics about the album, the music itself. The album cover, you know, those magical colors to a young black man in 1970, of red, black, and green. That meant something to me, just the idea of these three brothers getting together and doing this great album. So now, the title of the album is called "Band of Gypsies Return," which was released in 2006. So immediately when I hear about this album, it conjures up certain things in my mind about what it should be. Tell us, Mr. Miles, since your name is on this album, tell us what you think about this album.
Not very much,
Okay.
because it's misrepresented, and if I would have even been asked to do it, Billy Cox knows damn well that I would have said no.
Mm-hmm.
Because I haven't talked to Billy Cox in almost 4 years for a reason, 5 years. There is absolutely nothing that I have to say to this man, because he did it out of spite and out of greed.
So did Janie Hendrix.
And so did Janie Hendrix. I have nothing to say. They both do not like me or my wife, because we both made it very understandable. You don't bite the hand that feeds you.
She does.
And she thinks beyond a reasonable doubt, since I'm older, that I'm a recluse or I'm this and that. Now, right is right and wrong is wrong. But you see, it is a very true statement. God really don't like ugly. And those two people are ugly people.
Amen. I go with that.
Just so all of you who are out there who may be unfamiliar, ever since the passing of Jimi Hendrix, there has been a whole series of lawsuits and different things that have occurred where the intellectual property of anything connected with his legacy has bounced back and forth between many different people. Today, as we speak in 2006, the legacy of Jimi Hendrix is controlled by his stepsister, Jimi Hendrix.
Allegedly.
And okay, well, we can talk about that too. But so what Buddy is talking about is that there's a whole series of things that have occurred where things the rightful ownership of different things has come into question.
Yes.
It has come into question from many different quarters, including inside of the Hendrix family itself. And I know that every now and then, every 2 or 3 months, there's a press release from some of these different parties who were involved that says, "Oh, I'm filing a lawsuit because I believe that this piece of intellectual property belongs to me, and somebody else has got control of it, and they're making a lot of money off of it, and I think that needs to be changed." And that's been happening for the past, 10 years at least, constantly. So these are some of the kind of things that happen. And I want people to understand that it's never as straightforward as whatever you read on the liner notes of anything.
Correct.
It's never straightforward.
Correct.
These are some of the kind of things that Buddy is talking about, and it hurts because it's all personal, and that's what you're hearing in his voice.
Now, as early as within the last 40 days, because of this album, the feeling that I'm getting that will be broadened out partially because of you, and I know that it will. What am I supposed to do when I hear stories even about Jimi Hendrix's brother trying to take his brother's place, saying that he can play a guitar? I'm going to see him tomorrow night. And this dude put an article in the New York Times and also said it on Howard Stern within the last 6 months that I
worked for him.
What should I do?
Oh my God. What are you going to do?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to play one song and fuse what I want to in it for Jimmy, and then I'm going to say, my brother, wherever you are, have a good one.
Because you ain't your brother.
Because God's protecting you, but I got work to do. And I'll never ever throw you out of my life.
Just because you do something.
But your people, they must and they will stay away from me from this moment on, period. The reason why is because everything that has been done to me has been done because of out of jealousy, envy, and greed. Especially when it comes to Mr. William Billy Cox, especially when it comes to a stepsister that never had anything to do with Jimi Hendrix, period. She barely even knew the man, because I knew it, and I've got a picture to prove it. I met her when she couldn't even hardly talk. She was only 6 years old. And Jimmy's dad considered me his son also, just by the way. I'll never forget it. That's a whole story in itself.
A whole different story in itself.
Let me answer your question that you asked a moment ago. What you said something to the effect of, what should I do about this? My suggestion to you is the same suggestion that I make to all artists. Because I get to talk to a lot of artists. And a lot of artists have questions and concerns about things that have been done to them, both on a personal and a financial level, by various people in the music industry, in and out of the music industry, with respect to the legacy of their music and their reputations. And my suggestion is that you document it. And I know you're working on a book.
Yes, we are.
And I think that all of this and more should be documented.
It's in the book already.
Because you owe it to yourself to make sure that you have your voice down on a piece of paper. See, once you put it down on a piece of paper, and this is one of the things that, for some reason black folks have always resisted doing this. It's almost like we've been trained not to do this.
That's what he said.
Is to not to document our own history. And I say this for any artist, or even just any individual. Just write it down. Whatever it is. Write it down on a piece of paper, because at the end of the day, here in the United States of America, the only thing that matters is what's on a piece of paper. That's the only thing that it doesn't matter who knows, or who he said, she said, or go ask this person over here.
What's on the
piece of paper? What's on the piece of paper? So
now,
I'm glad to hear that you're writing a book.
Yes.
Now, in my decision making, there's also one gentleman 6 months ago that is from right here in New York City, that has been trying his very darndest, or damnedest, however you want to put it, excuse me, dear Lord, but his name is Mr. Ed Chalpin.
Ed, that's another story.
Has been trying his hardest to get me to sign a piece of paper saying,
to allow him to go after intellectual property he considers Buddy to own regarding Jimi Hendrix in the story.
That's the reason why I know that this whole limitations thing is a lie, and I'm going to use him as a witness. Because I figure that if you can do that, there's got to be something that you can mandate.
If Ed Chalpin is going after it, there's got to be something there.
Who is Ed Chalpin? Just
Ed
because
Chalpin.
people don't know that name.
Ed Chalpin is the reason why the Band of Gypsys record was cut.
Right. So now, what's the story there?
That's a good one.
Why is it that Ed, somebody whose name
I'll tell you
nobody
exactly
out there
why.
knows? Okay.
Now I do know.
Right.
Because Jimi Hendrix signed a deal with Ed Chalpin for $1.
Right. $1.
$1, which did not have anything at all to do with me. The reason why is because I was an independent contractor, number one. Number two, I was an independent artist with a name at the time.
When you say Jimi Hendrix signed a deal with Ed Chalpin, what kind of deal did he sign with Ed Chalpin for $1?
He signed a $1 deal allowing him to bear arms for the right of the Band of Gypsys record.
And when did Jimi Hendrix sign this deal?
It had to be before we did the Band of Gypsys. It had to have been. Because if you remember correctly, anything about Jimi Hendrix, he did a series of a couple of albums. One of them was Molly Youngblood.
Curtis Knight.
Curtis Knight and the Squires. See, that's where I know Cornell from. Cornell Dupree and Chuck and all those people.
And then when Ed...
And the reason why that happened is just like anything else. You see a situation that you can take advantage of it, there you go.
Music industry people.
You know, now you got to understand something where Ed Chopin comes from. Some of his partners used to be, back in the days, do you remember an artist by the name of Tommy James?
And the Shondells.
Yeah. Did you ever know anything about Morris Levy?
Yep, he's the guy, for those of you that have seen the movie Why Do Fools Fall in Love, he's the guy that had the Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers under contract.
Exactly.
And he was portrayed in the movie. So
exactly.
Yep.
Okay, now, my point is this. If you can screw somebody once, you can do it again, time and over. And to me, that's like a jackal. And jackals are
You're listening to community radio at its best. Uptown Radio, WJYN 98.5 FM, serving Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The opinions of this program are not the opinions of the station management or the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 7 acknowledged wonders of the world. You are about to witness the 8th.
Are you hep to the jive? Are you hep to the jive?
Coming up is the entrepreneur of SoulPatrol.com, Mr. Bob Davis. We're going to talk about soul, great black music. We're going to talk about the people. We're going to talk about technology. When we return to Burn.
Transgressions of his life and so many changes in his life. Most of them based around you know what. For the simple reason is that when you put yourself into certain ways and lifestyles, your territories depend on what you make of them. And from Northern California to Southern California, that's how well I know Sly. I know the better part of what he's been through, the managers he's had. David Kaepernick, for one, that was his first manager. His second manager was by the name of Ken Roberts. His third manager is Jerry Goldsmith and Steve Gold. I think Steve Gold is passed.
Jerry Goldstein.
Yeah, but Jerry Goldstein is still alive.
Right.
That's his current manager. Now, one thing that I give the man a lot of credit for these days is Sly is most definitely a very, very strong individual. He'd have to be for what he's been through. Because I know if it was me, and I've done one hell of a lot in those kind of circles myself, dealing with people, dealing with the pressure, dealing with every genre that there is to be in the music show business world. Now, I have not only known Sly for years, I've even played in his bands. Strangely enough, one time I played guitar for him because Freddie wouldn't show up, because this is when his brother turned to be a minister. And that's understandable. I can understand that, because it's a different case of where your boundaries lie and what your beliefs are and where you want to go. Mostly everybody in his band were all my personal friends. I didn't know Rose as well as I did Cynthia. His drummer Greg Rico and I are very, very close friends. His original drummer, of course, he had several drummers, but none of them were better than Greg Rico, his original drummer. And they were all from Vallejo and Oakland, and then in that area. Because when Sly first started, his big thing was he also worked for a guy by the name of Tom Donahue, who was a very popular local disc jockey in San Francisco. That was partners with another guy by the name of David Rubinson, I believe, who from time to time Sly used to produce groups for Tom. Anyway, he produced a record for a rock group called the Beau Brummels, and I think he wrote a song for them too as well. He also produced a guy by the name of Bobby Sherman, a record called The Swim.
Bobby Freeman.
Who I met, strangely enough, because he was going with this girl named Carol Doda, who was the first stripper on the strip in San Francisco. And I'll never forget that. And then, of course, I met Sly. So the saga rolled on, and from time to time, I also was very, very good friends with Larry Graham. And Sly, at the time, I know that it must have hurt him, but you see, once again, Sly was so strong-willed, and it began to be a point that when he was living in Marin County, that he had this way of exercising how bad he was and what he had, and it caught up with him just like it caught up with me. From the tax man and this and that. So it's not really a good deed. It turns out to be a dirty deed, a terrible deed, to put that kind of work, to have the things that both Sly and myself had to work with. I was never, ever in a position like Mr. Stone to do what he did, but I've done my fair share of work too. But I give Sly a lot of credit for this reason, is because his strength has carried him all the way up to as of this era in time. How long that's gonna last, only the man upstairs knows that. My feelings is like, for instance, when I saw him this year on the Grammy Awards, I was a little bit kind of confused in a way, because I had heard many times about him, and about his condition, but everybody seemed to think that he was okay and this and that, and I also had heard some stories that he was married to some woman who owned a Mercedes dealership or something like that. And then I remember when he had a very serious accident happen out at this ranch where he was staying back in the early 70s at Ken Roberts' place, his manager, where somebody had gotten killed and everything. I don't know the details of it, nor would I wanted to know about it, but I did hear some facts about it, and it's just one of those stories of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, I guess. But in my opinion, Sly is most definitely another one of the reasons why rock and the same as Jimmy, you certainly can't leave Sly out of that, because he was in that genre, I think.
There's this thing, we're getting ready to segue into something else that we talked about earlier. There was a real thing that was happening at that point in time, and it was a real positive thing. It was a positive groove. I mean, you had people like yourself and Jimi Hendrix, Sly Stone, Sly and the Family Stone, the Chambers Brothers, I'll even throw like Rare Earth in there. I mean, there was a thing that was happening.
Sure.
There was a thing that was happening that was great. There was a thing that was happening that was really at the root of what this country is all about.
Peter Horlbeck,
should be all about. And that's about the fact it's supposed to be, you know, one nation under God. It's supposed to be about everybody in this country having an equal opportunity.
One nation under a groove.
Or one nation under a groove. I was going to say that, but there's this whole thing that was happening where there were certain artists that really seemed like they understood that that is what the best of America is. And Sly and Family Stone was certainly one of the primary people behind it, but you were part of that also. Can you talk just for a moment about this thing? There is a thing that was happening where all of this seemed to be coming together. And over the years, people have called it slightly different things, but they all mean the same thing. When Jimi Hendrix was talking about the land of the new rising sun, or the electric church, or when George Clinton was talking about one nation under a groove, or when Prince talks about the new power generation, to me, that's all the same thing. They're really talking about the state of where all of us can reach our ultimate potential if we just work together.
Well, you speak of Mr. Roger Nelson, a.k.a. Prince.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to personally thank this young man for giving me the accolades as he's done in the past, when the couple of times that I saw him, and he always gave me great accolades because of my drumming, which is, I'm very thankful from anybody who desires to do that. Prince is, a lot of people has really called him very strange. I don't think he's strange at all. I think that what he managed to do is to take Jimmy, to take Sly, in particular, Sly really in particular. If you listen to him, especially like when he first started out, and how the whole Minneapolis sound started, because it was between him and the Time, really, which Prince produced, which was really his group. Well, it wasn't his, it wasn't his, it was his backup band. It was his second band,
Kind of in the same way, you could draw a historical analogy, if you will. You could say that Hendrix had a band called The Experience. Hendrix had another band called The Band of Gypsies. Prince had a band called The Revolution.
Right.
He had another band called The Time.
Yeah,
you could kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You could kind of draw those.
And the funny thing about it is I had come really close friends with a couple of his drummers that was in his bands. I forget Michael's last name, but he had a drummer that was almost as big as I was playing drums for him. This dude was simply just out of this world fantastic. From Minneapolis. Minneapolis is a strange city. The Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I like it. I like visiting there. I don't think I would ever like to live there, but I certainly have played there. Like in the early days, I played up on Hennepin Avenue years ago. I used to go to concerts and stuff and played there too as well. But what I always figured is that the last time I saw Prince, for instance, I saw him and Larry Graham. They both came down to visit me. And of course Prince stayed in the background because he didn't want to be seen, but Larry came up and said hello, what have you. To me, popularity does that. And I have never ever taken into consideration that because of how big you are and what you're about, that there's really a need for that. I never really saw Sly do that, but I'm sure that he did because of whatever reason it may have been. I also understand because of what he went through and what he chose to do. Because you're talking about one of the brightest black men musicians that I've ever met, as far as being able to write, being able to perform, and to come up with his own sound. I mean, Sly, when it comes to funk, man, there's nobody funkier. I mean, that's the honest to God's truth. I always had a love for Sly, even though there was a little kind of controversy between us. He popped me in my eye one time, and just because he thought he was bad, trying to show off and this and that and everything. But you see, that's how he was. He figured that he could do anything that he wanted to do. I don't have a problem with that. It's just that for me, these days, as I've grown, I've really settled down because it's the right thing to do, Bob. I put myself in the mode of taking a look back at time and evaluate the resources that I had to work with. I also give my friend Mr. Herbie Worthington a lot of credit. He's a gentleman that I lived with when I first moved to Los Angeles. I was his roommate, and we really had become close. And of course, after a while, staying in LA had gotten me crazy, just because it was easy to do. Because when you forget and when you start mixing and mingling, getting into drugs in those days, people didn't care. They didn't give a damn. They could have cared less. And that's the reason why I say I have more or less just very quietly counted my blessings and been very thankful. But the thing about it is, like, when you mention getting back to Sylvester or Self, Sly, there's really no comparison for what I really truthfully feel about the man's character as a man, because I'm sure that in those days, I think that he probably in his day-to-day, I would imagine probably has thought many times, but who knows, because as much as I don't want to admit it, I mean, when I saw him on the Grammys, I'm kind of confused. I don't really understand why the look. I just don't understand.
Oh, that's really easy to understand, because when that happened, I wrote something about it, and he got back to me through his various emissaries, and he said, "You're the only one that understood this, Bob. He's the biggest star in the universe of funk music, the Sly Stone.
I would agree with him.
The biggest star, and when he was on top, I mean, he was really on top. He was on Ed Sullivan all the time. He was really.
Did you see the show he did with Muhammad Ali?
Yes, on Mike Douglas. Yeah.
When he told Muhammad, he had balls to do that.
He said Muhammad Ali was talking about, for those of you who haven't seen it on the Mike Douglas show, Muhammad Ali was talking about race, and he was talking about what black people need to do, and how downtrodden we are. Sly Stone said, "Where do you live? You don't live in the ghetto. How do you know?" And I mean, that was deep.
He told the truth,
and he did tell the truth. So Sly.
But you see, I also know that Sly had a thing about Elijah Muhammad too. He did not care for the Black Muslim party.
We're going to get to that in just a moment, but I just want to answer your question about Sly. It's the biggest star in the universe. If he's going to come back to the public eye, because nobody's seen Sly Stone in 15 or 20 years in terms of making a national television appearance like that. There's only one way he can come. He's got to be a star. He's got to be a star. And so he, in my mind, and this is what I wrote, he affected that look because it was a way for him to make a grand entrance onto the public scene. With the mohawk. And I think he did a very smart thing. He stood on the stage, and there's a whole story about that, too. And I'll tell you about that offline. He was out there for a minute and a half, and then he walked off.
Yeah.
He walked off.
That's typical Sly.
He walked off.
I've seen him do it myself.
So I think...
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I think he just wanted people to remember, it's me. No matter who it is that you... And I wrote the song and said everybody's a star, but really and truly, I'm the star. Nobody should ever forget that. And that's why I think he did it the way he did it.
Well, see, I never considered Sly to be a controversial person. Sly made it very, very obvious and clear, just exactly what you're saying, is that he is the star. Okay? Now, what confused me, but now you straighten me out, and I appreciate you doing that. You see, when I know a guy and know where he comes from, the time that I had seen him before, all the bleached blonde hair and this and that, his neck was straight up. He stood straight up. I seen him in Aspen, Colorado. He was going to visit some girlfriend or something. and he looked really, really good. I mean, real good. You know, all his own hair right and everything. But then immediately about 3 or 4 years after that, I just happened to turn on the TV because I wanted to see the Grammys, right? And I looked at him for that length of time. Me and Shirley both did, I believe. And I said, my God, you know, it takes, even though that you may feel the way that you want to feel, it takes a lot of courage for somebody to do that. Yeah. Especially in front of those proletariat white people. Mm-hmm. And all the people were there. I think the boy's got a lot of guts, personally, that's what I think. Oh, most definitely. Got a lot of guts. That's most definitely he does.
And I think the story is not concluded on Sly Stone. I think that, matter of fact, I know he's working on an album right now, and that we're going to see that come to fruition probably very soon. So the story is not over with yet, but I think that he wanted to make that appearance to let people know, people that care, that he's still around.
We'll see.
He's still here.
We'll see. One thing, like I said, you're not, I mean, he is the man when it comes to soul funk. He is the king. There is no disputing that. I will give him that eternally. But I hope there's nothing wrong with me saying to you that I really feel that I hope that for what he's doing, that it's really a sensible thing for him to do, because he knows he has all my love and personal support. Mm-hmm. And if you ever write him, tell him that I send my love and to get in touch sometime, because you got my number. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'd love to hear from him so I can give him a call and say hello personally. Now, Larry Graham, I think Cynthia, the trumpet player,
right?
She's got 1 or 2 of his kids,
something like that.
Yeah. But Cynthia's a beautiful woman. Mm-hmm. But she's also went on the other side of the fence for many years. You know. Oh yeah. Yeah. I know for a fact. Because her and my sister used to mess around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me talk to you, and I had to ask this before, but maybe I wasn't.
You're listening to community radio at its best. Uptown Radio, WJYN 98.5 FM, serving Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The opinions of this program are not the opinions of the station management or the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 7 acknowledged wonders of the world. You are about to witness the 8th.
Are you hep to the jive? Are you hep to the jive?
Coming up is the entrepreneur of SoulPatrol.com, Mr. Bob Davis. We're going to talk about soul, great black music. We're going to talk about the people. We're going to talk about technology. When we return to Burn.
Maybe I didn't ask it well. I'm going to talk about race, because I think that there's something to be said for what occurred during that period of time. You've talked a lot about different people that you worked with, different people that you've had personal relationships with, and it seems to me that there's been a lot of white people and a lot of black people, Hispanic people that you've worked with and you have and count as being personal friends. That's unusual in our society. That's not the norm. Normally people stick with their own kind.
Of course.
How many times have we heard that?
That's the reason why. That's the reason why I'm proud to say that I broke barriers.
Right.
I have no problem with that. Because, for instance, If you didn't know it, Hispanics are the other side of black. Check it out. And there's a lot of Hispanics in New York. Period. All over. They come from down south, on all the way down, you know, to Cuba, to the what do you call it? All down in that area is all Hispanic, and you got all different color barriers of race. You got some real dark, you got some real light-skinned, the whole thing. But we're brothers, okay? And they can't say no to that. Just because they speak different than I do, I don't know their language. Sometimes I have no trouble trying to
with English.
With English, you know what I mean? But I have been very, very influenced by Latin music. Eddie Palmieri's a good friend of mine. Like I said before, Tito Puente, God rest his soul. Flora Purim and Airto were good friends of mine. Jose Chipito Reyes, who played with Carlos, Victor Pantola, Willie Bobo, Potato Valdez. These are some of the greatest conga players in the world, were my best friends. Eddie Palmieri and I are like this. Ruben Blades, another good friend of mine. I can go on and on and on, but just
played with everybody. I asked him one day, did you play with Jesus? He said, yeah, I met the brother on the side of the road and had a sandwich. I said, no, you didn't.
Here's somebody I want to ask you about. Billy Cobham.
Yes. He, matter of fact, didn't he want to do a song of mine just recently?
Billy Cobham?
Yeah. Didn't those two, what, Bino and Pino, they wanted to use a song of mine that Billy wanted to use?
I think so.
Yeah. These are two guys that are, what is it?
They're Italian.
Italian, yeah. And I said, yeah, sure, send me a license, whatever. Yeah, me and Billy are very close. He's probably, he took up where I left off because, and the reason why I say that is because I was the first in that genre. I was the first brother to play fusion. Okay? Did you know that?
Tell me about it.
Okay. Do you?
By the way, it is said that Miles Davis selected Billy Cobham for his band because Billy Cobham reminded him of you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's why I asked the question.
Well, Miles wanted me. Miles used to get on my. He said, you know what was funny? He invited me up to his house. This was when he was doing Jack Johnson. Right? So this damn fool, my trademark is I used to wear a top hat all the time. With my earring, which I'm gonna buy me some new ones here in New York. But he went in his closet and he pulls out his tux jacket. He said, "Hey, buddy, he said, come here, you big motherfucker. I got some of them." And he brought it over to me, right? And I was sitting down, and I got up, and when he handed it to me, he said, get your big ass up. He said, I want you to put it on. Let me go get a pair of scissors. He says, you wearing this motherfucker tonight? I said, Miles, I can't wear this jacket. I can't wear this tux. Right? So, he, and then looked at me. You know how crazy. You heard how crazy. I mean, but he was Miles's. Now I'm gonna tell you something. Now you think I got a mind, a controversial mind? See, a lot of people don't know it, but Miles wasn't prejudiced, okay?
Mm.
But I don't know if you've ever heard any stories about Miles. But you can ask Betty Davis. She's still alive if you can find her.
She lives in Pittsburgh.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Ask her what Miles thought about different races. Now you think I got controversy. Now, if I was to tell you, okay, Carlos Santana concludes and has said many times that Miles Davis is his most favorite. Now, it's believable, but I don't totally believe it. You know why I don't? How can you believe somebody if you don't really know them? Now, I believe Carlos could have probably met him, probably at some times, and I probably believe that he did. But see, Carlos didn't know that he didn't care for too many others.
Miles Davis, I heard, was 10 times.
And I swear to God, I ain't got nothing to lie about when it comes to that. But that's the truth.
I heard if you walked up on Miles, he would cut your ass out for doing it. He wouldn't talk to people unless he wanted to. He was a very, very difficult person to deal with, just like Buddy.
I've heard that also. I interviewed Miles Davis's family about a year, well, about 8 months ago.
Is his brother still living?
I don't think so. I interviewed...
What, his twin brother? What is his twin?
Let me tell you what, I've interviewed Miles.
Because I forget, I know he had a brother that looked almost damn near like him.
Interviewed his son, his grandson, his daughter, his nephew, and his brother-in-law, all at the same time. All in the room together, along with, oh my man, my mind just went blank. From Return to Forever, the drummer. Man, he's gonna kill me too.
Return to, you talking about Stanley?
No, not the drummer. Stanley was the bass player.
No, he's dead now. What's his name? No.
He's not dead.
I know him too very well.
Matter of fact, he grew up right around here. He's one of the Jamaica boys.
Yeah, he's a brother.
Yeah.
Lenny White?
Lenny White. I'm sorry. Lenny White. They were all in the room at the same time. They were all in the room. Now, speaking of drummers.
Was Chick playing with him then? Was he playing with Chick Corea?
No, this was just.
But before that, he's playing with Miles.
He played with Miles. He's on Bitches Brook.
That's right.
He's on Bitches Brook.
Yeah.
He was like 16, 17 years old playing on Bitches Brook. But another drummer I just wanted to bring up that wears a top hat also. Neftali Santiago.
Mm-hmm.
From Mandrill.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was top hat too.
You know that we all, listen, George, P-Funk, Mandrill, myself, we sold out RFK Stadium in Washington, D.C. 94,000 people. Sure did.
Yeah, people in D.C. still talk about that show.
Yep, sure did. Tore it up. Tore it up. Everybody did. You know, put it to them. Good show.
You're listening to Soul Patrol Internet Radio. Soul Patrol Internet Radio. Welcome.
I also worked the, what's the place that Eddie Murphy played at? What is that? It's a smaller venue. You know where he did the one about Ralphie Baby and all of that? What place is that he did that at?
I don't.
The theater. It's a theater.
In Washington.
In Washington, because that's where he did that album.
Not the Warner Theater. Constitution Hall.
Constitution Hall.
Constitution Hall.
Constitution Hall. I played there about 3 or 4 times.
See, there's a whole history here that when your book comes out, people will be able to read all of this stuff. Because to me, it's fascinating. You have been, and I'm getting ready to conclude this interview.
Not yet.
But
You'll talk for days.
I know he will, but I'm running out of time here also.
Okay.
But what I just wanted to say is that you're kind of like a thread that runs through a whole lot of different pieces of American popular music over the last 30 years, 35 years. You know, you talk about R&B, rock, funk, Latin, all of these blues, all of these different things. It's an amazing story here that I think people need to seriously consider when you're thinking about the history of this music. And, not to say that it's over with, but it's something that people need to seriously consider because they don't talk about you the way that you're supposed to be talked about. And let me get...
Well, they probably don't know how.
Well, it's a tough thing. I've talked to the people that run the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions. And I've talked to the people at the Rhythm and Blues Foundation. And I've mentioned, hey, well, how about Buddy Miles? And both of those two organizations, they look at me like I got horns growing out of my head. I said, yeah, how about Buddy Miles? And it's like, well, don't you guys get it? Well, Buddy Miles. I said, okay, well, what about the Band of Gypsies? Forget about Buddy Miles, okay? What about the Band of Gypsies? Well, they only made one album. Well, that's because their leader died. That doesn't mean that they don't... If you're going to put somebody like the Sex Pistols in to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame...
Yeah, why ain't Buddy Miles?
Why ain't Buddy Miles in there?
Thank you.
I talked to him for 4 years about that, and they say the same thing. His name is on the ballot. I said, you're lying. You're lying to me. Why are you... Well, there's only a certain number of votes. I said, if you guys put Britney Spears in there before you put Buddy Miles, I'm going to come commit suicide on your front door. Just right there. Just cut my own throat.
I realized that the Sex Pistols and the Ramones are regarded as these highly influential, forces in the creation of punk rock, and they've influenced all these people. But these guys didn't even have any hit songs. I mean,
Well,
see, it's just not right. And you see, part of my purpose is to at least put it down that, okay, here's something that's right. Here's something that's righteous. If people want to do things that are righteous, this is one thing you can do that's righteous.
Well,
yeah, I'm with you, Bob.
This is what I'm going to say. We are going to conclude interview number 1.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to continue in the very near future for the simple reason is that it is the right thing to do.
The continuing interviews of Buddy Miles.
To continuing
by Bob Davis.
The continuing saga of the Buddy Miles interviews.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much for taking the time, and as you said, we will continue this because there's a lot more to the story.
Yes, there is.
So stay tuned, y'all.
Amen.
So all you guys have to do on this next one is the subjects we all know speak for themselves. But now see, we can even go further, because what about the presidents that I've done met? What about, see, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame doesn't know that. They don't know that I stayed at Jimmy Carter's house. They don't know that I went to Washington. They don't know a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I was going to save that for you. That's another subject that we can get to. We can also go to in the state of California. I'm not afraid to talk about when I was in the penitentiary. Are you kidding me? It taught me how to grow up and be a man. Because I was, pardon my French, I was uncharacter-like. Period. And it took me 3 times to do it. I don't have a problem with it. I really don't care anymore so much about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because it's like, as far as I'm concerned, damn if you do, damn if you don't. If it's possible, well, hey, do it. Now, I do know one person, but I love him to death. His name is Pine Top Perkins. He got a Grammy, last year. But he deserved to have it. He played with Muddy Waters. He deserves to have it. You know what I'm saying?
You deserve to have the same similar thing.
But at 93 years old, come on.
One last thing.
And I love you, Pine Top.
Robert Lockwood passed away.
And that's where
Recently.
I'm going. Yeah, that's where I'm going.
You've been associated with Robert Lockwood.
Oh yes.
Okay.
He's was one of my dear friends.
Tell people about that.
Robert Lockwood Jr. He was very instrumental in playing with Robert Johnson.
That's who he learned to play from.
That's who he learned to play from.
Mom dated Robert Johnson.
His mom dated Robert Johnson. Okay? Robert Lockwood, through the years, has meant so much to the likes of Muddy Waters, the likes of John Lee Hooker, the likes of so many of the blues artists that have been past and present. Okay, this is the year, almost a year out of 2006, going into 7. Here's another man that if you looked at him, he looked like he was 60, but I guess the dear Lord was calling him. Now, for whatever reason, I don't have the vaguest of an idea. But as far as a man's man, this man was everything that a prince would ever want to be, as far as I'm concerned. He was a dear, sweet human being. He was very, very gifted in his style, especially in his earlier days as a player. And even at this age, we chuckled a lot, we smiled and embraced each other a whole lot. I am going to Cleveland. Some friends of mine are coming down to pick up, my partner's coming down to pick me up. I'm probably going to be leaving me and my wife.
Go straight to
and go straight to Elyria.
And Buddy doesn't
Ohio.
have to go to funerals, by the way. He's only
I do have a problem with it, because I really do like to remember people like they are, but this man means that much to me, because he reminds me, if I ever had a second father, it would be Robert Lockwood. Okay?
That's a heck of a testimonial.
And I want his wife to know that I consider
Gary, we'll see you soon.
that I consider him a father of mine. And I want her to personally know that I'm not and would never ever been worried about to get there just as long as I got there in time. And that's why I'm going, because I really have a thing about the dead. I really don't care for it, because I lost my sisters because of drugs. My mother was natural, of course. My father, well, he had some things too. Yeah, but see, you didn't know that my father had syphilis. a long time ago.
Why you got to go there?
I told you, I don't
Everybody
care.
in the 40s got syphilis.
I
I'm
don't
sorry,
know.
they just did.
No, they did not.
A lot of musicians
No,
did.
they did not.
Yeah, they did.
No, they did not. That's not true. A lot of your
Died
ballroom
of
musicians.
pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
Is what he passed away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to set the record straight.
Excuse me for being honest once again. I'm sorry.
And on that note, our interview will
But anyway,
conclude.
we will conclude. And by the way, everybody, I would personally once again like to thank Mr. Bob for his kind service. And we will be doing number 2 and let it roll on. And this whole conversation and interview is going to be dedicated to my friend and colleague and my second father, Mr. Robert Lockwood. And you will be seeing it and hearing about it in print. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Buddy Miles.
You're listening to community radio at its best. Uptown Radio, WJYN 98.5 FM, serving Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The opinions of this program are not the opinions of the station management or the Uptown Entertainment and Development Corporation.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 7 acknowledged wonders of the world. You are about to witness the 8th.
Are you hep to the jive? Are you hep to the jive?
Coming up is the entrepreneur of SoulPatrol.com, Mr. Bob Davis. We're going to talk about soul, great black music. We're going to talk about the people. We're going to talk about technology. When we return to Burn.
Yeah!